Here's a true story that just recently happened to both me and my boyfriend. I live with my boyfriend in a top story, third floor apartment. He has always said that when he was younger, he and his mates used to try and conjure up evil spirits and were all into the occult. He stopped trying to contact devils, etc. after a few evil things happened to him, and ever since then, clairvoyants and mediums have always said that he has dark shadows that follow him around. I, on the other hand, have never ever had anything happen to me. All my friends have had strange experiences to talk about, but I have none. I'm away interstate a lot. My boyfriend has to stay by himself in the apartment. He said that he couldn't see the dark shadows anymore. He used to be able to see them out of the corner of his eye, and I believe that they had left him. Occasionally, when I was speaking to him on the phone, he would suddenly say, "Oh my god, what was that?" and tell me that he'd just seen something large, the size of a large dog I guess, and black, dart across the lounge room floor from one wall to another, then totally disappear. To be honest, I never truly believed in what he had seen, and didn't worry much about it until one night, in the apartment, I went to bed early, and my boyfriend stayed up watching TV in the lounge room. Our bedroom is at the end of a long hallway, and I've always been a bit scared of the hall, as it's very long and dark. About 2 hours after I went to bed, I could hear this faint buzzing noise, which sounded like it came from the other end of the hall near the lounge room. I just thought that my boyfriend was using some kind of electrical gadget to fix one of the computers that we had, and didn't worry about it. It was a very strange sounding buzzing that was slowly getting louder. It sounded like whatever it was coming down the hall. I started thinking that it was my boyfriend walking down the hall in the dark with some strange thing to play a joke on me. He knows I get scared easily. The noise started getting unbearably loud and closer to my room. I didn't have a bedside light next to the bed, so I sat up in the dark trying to see into the hallway. As I was about to come through the bedroom door, the noise got unbearably loud, and I was trying to figure out what on earth the noise could be from. I was slightly unsure if it was my boyfriend playing a joke on me or not. I then decided that it was a good idea to start panicking and considered making a run for it out of the bedroom, which would mean going into the noise, when my boyfriend suddenly turned the light on and came down the hall. Everything stopped instantly. I screamed for my boyfriend to come into the room and started babbling about the noise and asked him, "Did you hear it and what was that?" Of course, he hadn't seen or heard anything and had never had this sort of thing happen before. Well, eventually, I got over it, sort of, and tried to think about what it was. A couple of weeks later, my boyfriend was in the apartment again by himself, and he was in the bathroom in the hallway, with no lights on in the hall. As he looked out of the bathroom into the darkness, he said he saw a huge shadow of a particular shape walk and move past the bathroom. He followed it into the hallway and watched this extremely black shadow move slowly down the hall and into the bathroom and just melt away into the darkness. This all happened a couple of weeks ago, so we're not sure if anything else is going to happen or not. I hope not. I know one thing is for sure though. I won't be staying in that apartment alone. Thanks for reading. Ever since I was a little girl, I've had and made connections with the unexplained. I wonder if our DNA carries this to our children, for my son and daughter also have their own stories to tell. Like our heritage, a continuing connection with our relatives in their past, spirits and events that have a connection with them that we may know nothing about, other than the fact that some strange happenings happen to us, something that we can't explain or understand. I'm a second-generation American. My grandparents on my mother's side were Russian immigrants from the Carpathian mountain range in Europe, home of Dracula. My father's side came from Budapest, and it was told to me that his family was Hungarian gypsy descent. Many strange stories were told to me by my father during the course of his life, but I'm going to tell you about my own experiences and my children's. I've lived in many different cities, and things just seem to follow me. I think, or does our spirit possibly hold connections that lead us to certain places without conscious choice? I've yet to figure it out. My most recent event story is in Las Vegas, where I now live. I bought a house that is about 35 years old. That's old by Vegas standards. When I went house hunting, I found the house, and without even going in it, I told the retailer that this is the house I wanted. It was out of my price range. Not expensive, but I had a modest income and was a single parent with 2 children. I wanted the house so bad, I didn't even have the money in the bank to cover the earnest money deposit, and during escrow, I hoped that it wouldn't be found out. I prayed every single night that I could have this house. I don't know why, but something drove me to it. One night, I was laying in my bed, on my stomach, and I heard a very soft whisper in my ear, directly behind my head. A man's soft voice said to me in a comforting way, "You shall have your house." The very next morning, I got the call from the retailer. The loan was approved. We moved into the house, then things started to happen. The first day the air conditioning went out. The second day, the refrigerator went out. I had the repairs made, but one thing that I could never fix was the master bedroom's constant coldness, sometimes too cold to even sleep in. Every heating and air conditioning company that I called in to check it out said that there was no mechanical problem with the unit or the vents, and strangely, whenever someone came to check it, the room's temperature was normal. So I learned to live with it. Then one day, I was yelling at my kids while I was walking towards my bedroom, and just before I entered my room, and as I stood in the threshold, my voice resonated as if I were in a great hall. I took a few steps back and it sounded normal. I walked into my room and it sounded normal. Only in that small spot did my voice resonate like that. Strange events started to happen in the next few days. Every night, around midnight, just after I had fallen asleep, my dogs began barking as if to alert me of a stranger. My dog slept with me in my bedroom on my bed. I started to get upset after the first few times of checking it out and found nothing. My kids were fast asleep, so what could it be? One night, I decided to stay awake and catch whatever caused the disruption. I just lied in my bed with the lights off as usual, pretending to be going to sleep, looked at the clock, and it was just before midnight. And just like clockwork, Roxy, one of my dogs, who was lying in the front of my bed, jumped up and started barking while staring towards the doorway. I threw off the covers, sat up, and looked towards the doorway of my bedroom, and to my astonishment, I saw only two large almond-shaped yellow-green eyes glowing, staring right at me. It all happened so fast. I must have startled whatever it was, because it lasted only seconds, and the eyes seemed to have backed up so rapidly as to whoosh away like a shooting star or comet falling from the sky with a trail of light. I turned on the light and got out of bed, and quickly checked the kids to see if they were okay. They were fast asleep and heard nothing and knew nothing when I talked to them the next morning. But my daughter did say that a few nights previous to the incident she walked past her brother's bedroom and saw him vertically suspended upside down on his head, out of his bed, still in a sleeping position with his blanket and pillow in the air. She never told me about this because she thought I would never believe it. Well, that next morning also brought about the change of the sound of the threshold at the doorway to my bedroom. I stood in the same spot as before, spoke aloud, and the resonating sound my voice made was gone. Both my children have seen unexplained apparitions in another house we lived in. This was in Portland, Oregon. It was a new house built on unholy ground. Objects were moved and found in places where they didn't belong. Lights were found on when they were on when we had turned them off. But the most disturbing was a faceless lady covered in a hooded dark cloak that appeared to my son that made him cry in the night. He saw her standing in this building closet doorway in the bedroom. The next night, my daughter, not knowing what her brother had seen, saw the very same thing in her bedroom closet doorway. Both of their closets share the same wall and were back to back. My stories are many, and so are my experiences. Maybe some other time I can tell you more. I swear that all I have said is the truth, but thank you for reading. When I was about 10 years old, and my brother 8 years old, we lived in a house on 3 acres of wooded land where we used to play hide and seek with our friends. One day, we were just playing outside as usual in the late afternoon with our next door neighbor friends, and my brother was trying to find us. I could hear him calling my name from a little ways away, and he sounded a little scared, so I decided to see what was the matter. I came upon him in this little clearing, under the canopy of trees, and in the middle of this clearing was the weirdest thing we had ever seen. We were mesmerized for a moment because it looked to us like a huge, white man. It looked to be about 10 feet tall to us kids. As quick as we saw it, it was gone. It just sort of seemed to zip through the trees, and we tried to follow it, but it was going so fast, it was almost floating. We managed to follow it across the street and down to the creek, and then lost sight of it. Of course, we were a bit shaken by this event, and ran inside to tell our mom and dad, and of course, they didn't believe us, and suggested that maybe in fact what we saw was a big white dog or something. We were very adamant about the fact that it was not a dog, but a big, white glowing man that just sort of disappeared. We didn't feel scared at all when we saw it, and we never saw it again. But, to this day, we both know what we did in fact see. We have speculated that it might have been a ghost from one of the many old cars that we found in our property, but who knows? Thanks for reading. It was late summer or early fall of 1971. My friend and I were traveling on a stretch of road which leads to the local township. It was around 9 p.m. We had traveled this road often just to ride and get out of the boredom of the nearby city in which we lived. All we did around those times were hang out in the parking lot of Burger King. As I stated, we had traveled this road many times without incident. We rode until we decided to turn around and head back to town and the Burger King. Along the road was a cemetery. We must have passed this area dozens and dozens of times. Anyway, on this particular night, I was driving down the road and noticed a figure who seemed to be hitchhiking about 100 or so yards ahead. I said to my friend, "Look at that guy hitchhiking there at the time of night by the cemetery." He nodded. Upon getting closer, the figure appeared to be in a hooded robe and holding an old lantern. When we reached the figure, he turned his head and there was no face. It was all black. After passing the figure, we turned our heads but saw nothing. We were both speechless. I sped back to Burger King, and neither a word was spoken by any of us. At Burger King, I asked my friend what he saw, if anything, and he stated exactly what I saw. At the time, I didn't tell him what I saw until he told me what he saw. Let it be known that we were not drinking or anything during the incident. To this day, I still get chills when I pass that area. Thanks for reading. This happened to me about 10 years ago in Pearl City, Hawaii. I'm a very skeptical person by nature, but I can't explain what I saw one night. While grading papers one night, I thought I saw my wife standing 10 feet away from me out of the corner of my eye. She just stood there staring at me. It was about 11:30 at night, so I thought she was going to show up behind me and scare me, but she just stood there. I had other things to do, so I ignored her and forgot about her being there, really, until about 10 minutes later. I looked out the corner of my eye, and she was still standing there. I went back to work thinking that she must be crazy. A few minutes later, I again looked out the corner of my eye and she was still there. A good 15 to 20 minutes had passed since I first saw her. I decided to turn towards her and scare her, so I quickly turned my chair and here's what I saw. It was a short three-dimensional shadow, which had its hands up in front of it waving them up and down. Its face was featureless with no eyes or mouth. The best way to describe it is as a guy in a black suit with a flat board over its face. It was only there for a few seconds when it turned sideways and jumped into an adjoining family room. I sat stunned there for a few seconds and then realized that someone may have broken into my house. Upon looking for it and not finding it, I awoke my wife and told her what I saw. We had the bishop from my church over the next day. He told us he blessed the house years earlier when my brother-in-law was seeing things floating around the ceiling. The part I saw my ghost in was an addition to the house and had never been blessed. It was almost as if it was trying to get me but couldn't. My wife and I discussed seeing people out of the corner of our eyes constantly in that part of the house. We never mentioned it to each other before since we didn't want to be seen as crazy. She said she even saw a very large man standing in the doorway to our bedroom as she was reading in bed one day. She could see him standing out there at the corner of her eyes, but when she looked up, he was gone. I'm very skeptical about these things and have come up with many explanations over the years, but none of them explain why it stood there for over 15 minutes. We had one another experience in the house, which I won't get into now, but even the people out of the corners of our eyes went away after the blessing. Thanks for reading. September 22nd, 1973 brought much sadness and happiness to my family. This was the day that I was born and my great-grandmother was buried. I never knew anything of my great-grandmother until I was 4 years old. I remember the visit like it was yesterday, even though I met her a long time ago. I was asleep at my grandparents' house. My great-grandma lived there before she died, and for some strange reason, I suddenly woke up in the middle of the night with the feeling that someone was looking at me. I opened my eyes and saw an old lady looking at me. At the age of 4, I was scared out of my mind. I remember her telling me not to be afraid, and that she was only there to look at me because she never got a chance to. I started to yell, and just before my grandmother came into the room to check on me, the old lady disappeared. I told my grandma what had happened, and she told me that it was just a bad dream. The morning when I got up, I saw a picture of my great-grandmother in my grandparents' bedroom, and I told my grandmother that that was the lady who visited me in the middle of the night. And that is when I found out the story about her dying 3 days before I was born. And deep down, I know my grandmother believes me and that I'm not just making this up and had a bad dream. Thanks for reading. This is a very true tale. 2 years ago, my father-in-law died of cancer of the throat. He died early in the afternoon at his home in his own bed, just as he wished. That evening, I sat in my bedroom grieving for him. I heard a cough and thought to myself, God, that sounds like Barry. Apart from my 2 teenage daughters, his only grandchildren, I was the only one in the house. When I turned to look in the direction of the cough, there stood Barry. He just looked as alive as you and I, with one difference. He was not thin or ill looking. He said these words to me, which at the time made no sense whatsoever to me. Would you please tell Caroline, my youngest daughter, I'm very sorry I did not buy her the green frog. When I was alive, I didn't have the time, and when I was dying, that took up all of my time. I've lots of time now, and I would like to buy her one, but I seem to have left my wallet at home. Then he vanished. The next day, I duly gave his message to my daughter and asked if it made sense to her. She burst into tears and gave me this explanation. When they were young children, they would visit their papa every Sunday for a few hours. He would take them to a cake shop and buy them a pastry in the shape of a green frog. Since I was not eager for my kids to consume treats, it became a tradition I was not let in on. The week before he died, Caroline had been visiting him and holding his hand. His mind was wandering, and he apologized for not buying her a frog on her 14th birthday. She had asked for one, but he said she was too big a girl at 14. For some reason, this was still bothering him in the afterlife. Thanks for reading. My cousin Ralph bought a 150 to 200-year-old colonial home in Raynham, Massachusetts back in the 1960s. The house was in a semi-rural area with a bar next door. Ralph was single and lived alone. One Saturday, when he was in the Army Reserves, he had taken a shower and had some time to spare before he had to leave to join his unit. He decided not to get dressed, but to lie in his bed with a towel around his waist while he leafed through a magazine. His back was to the only entrance to the room. It was afternoon. He could see directly out the window in front of him. While he was reading, he heard a noise at the door. Since no one should have been in the house except for him, he tried to turn to see who was there. He found he couldn't move. Instead, he heard somebody walking across the room towards him. When the footsteps got to his bed, they stopped. The side of the bed then moved down, as if someone had sat on it. He then felt a hand give a squeeze on his waist, as if to reassure him. The hand remained there for a while. Even with the hand on him, Ralph never felt afraid, but he was amazed by what was happening. He could see the second hand moving on the alarm clock set to the bed, and the leaves blowing in the trees outside, which convinced him he wasn't dreaming. He still couldn't move. Not his head, not his body, nothing. He seemed to be frozen in space. After a while, the hand removed itself from his waist, and the bed shifted back to its normal position like it would if whoever was there had gotten up. Ralph heard the footsteps retrace their path to the doorway of their room. As soon as they got there, he could move. He flipped over to see the back of a girl with long, brown hair that hung to her waist, going out the door. Since his house was old, the stairway to the second floor was built in such a way that it was necessary to go up the stairs, take 2 immediate lefts, and follow the railing back the length of the house to get to his bedroom. In other words, it would have been impossible for anyone, even running, to go around the head of the stairs and down by them to take the time to get to his bedroom door. Seeing nobody, he then checked all the other rooms in case somebody was hiding upstairs. He couldn't find anyone. My cousin Ralph died about 11 years ago, but he told me this story shortly after it happened. He said it really didn't occur to him at the time that it would have been a ghost. He just couldn't figure out what was going on. In retrospect, the only thing which did spook him was the hand on his waist. Ralph and I were very close. He kept me updated with the other unusual occurrences which happened at this house until he sold it. Ralph was a talented artist who had money. There were many objects of value in his home, antiques and paintings especially, but small, insignificant things kept being stolen. For instance, he had an antique candle barrel with candles in it. He would frequently find one or several of the candles missing, but never all of them. He also would have cheap flashlights disappear. He even tested the ghost by leaving the flashlights out in one of the ghost's favorite places, the bottom of the stairs and the hand railing. to see if they would be gone the next day. At times, this did happen. I forget how many alarm clocks he had to replace. He never saw the ghost after that one Saturday, but since that experience, he was also aware that he was not alone in the house. Eventually, he developed an affection for the ghost, and like I mentioned, started playing games with it by leaving the flashlights out to be taken. He was sorry he couldn't take her with him when he moved. Happy Saturday, and welcome to another reading of Horror Narrations by Phantom of Darkness. I bet Jim was enjoying every second of this, and if you guys haven't seen my channel trailer with Jim and you have no idea what I'm talking about, check out the channel trailer, because Jim is drinking cyanide poison and he's enjoying it while he's watching my videos. But he's not a douchebag. At least that's what they tell me, but I know he's a douchebag. We all know it. Give it up for Jim, everybody. Claps. Okay guys, no, but seriously. Hope you enjoyed these traditional classic tales of haunted homes. I know I threw in a road ghost story because that's so cool, but for the most part, these were pretty good stories, and I think you enjoyed them too. So even if Jim's gonna enjoy them, then you might as well. I'm slurring my words in this video because I'm kind of tired, to be honest with you guys. But it's a tired feeling that's really satisfactory for me because it doesn't really matter because I love doing this content for you guys. So I'd rather live on like freaking 0 seconds of sleep than just, have the ability to not do this video and mess up my words. As always, guys, I hope Gymnasium actually comments below because I really want to hear how he thinks of this video. And I want to hear from you guys. So please comment, like, share, and subscribe to this video if you haven't yet. Well, actually, don't subscribe to the video, subscribe to the channel. Because if you subscribe to the video, all you're going to get is this one video over and over for you to watch. That doesn't even exist. And my point is, I love you guys, and be sure to share this video. Make sure it gets out to everybody because nobody ever gets any notifications anymore. And I'll see you in the next video. So good night, good morning, and I'll see you in the next video, which I just said. I'm a broken record, bye. Hi. Love you guys, seriously. I'm just going to stop just being annoying. Love you guys. Bye.